The Dungeon Master Experience. This regular column is for dungeon masters who like to build worlds and campaigns as much as I do. Here, I share my experiences as a DM through the lens of Iomandra, my Dungeons & Dragons campaign world. Even though the campaign uses the 4th edition rules, the topics covered here often transcend editions. Hopefully, this series of articles will give you inspiration, ideas, and awesome new ways to menace your players in your home campaigns. If you're interested in learning more about the world of Iomandra, check out the wiki. Dungeon Master for Life, Chris Perkins. Surprise! Epic Goblins. Monday night. The adventurers are 22nd level and crewing a ship heading west across the Dragon Sea. The Maelstrom is a swift vessel powered by an elemental ring of water, an idea pilfered from the Eberron campaign setting. One of the adventurers, a Genasi sword mage, was recently relieved as captain of the Maelstrom so that he could lead a special ops mission for his mentor and benefactor, Sea King Valkyroy. You might recall the same thing happened to Captain Picard in Star Trek The Next Generation episode Chain of Command. 3 days ago, the Maelstrom survived a run-in with the 3 enemy ships sent by a rival Sea King. Having weathered that storm, the Maelstrom had resumed its westward trek towards the party's ultimate objective. En route, adventurers catch sight of a lone vessel heading in the opposite direction. Corpses are lashed to the other ship's hull, and its sails are stained crimson with blood. The adventurers confronted a ship like this once long before during the heroic tier, when goblins raided their island home. Clearly, this blood-sailed vessel belongs to the kingdom of Sangor, a savage island nation of goblins far to the west. That's right, goblins, at 22nd level, no less. Our heroes would have been inclined to leave the goblin ship alone, but for 2 reasons. First, the party's ranger spots a cage being dragged alongside the goblin ship at sea level. Within the cage, he sees a prisoner, struggling to stay above water. Second, the ship is openly plying the trade lanes and is clearly a threat to passing trade ships. The noble heroes decide to storm the ship and rescue the caged prisoner. What ensues is a rollicking shipboard battle against an enemy the heroes never expected to fight at their level. Reasons for the encounter. This goblin ship encounter was meant to provide context for the larger campaign world. I created the side trek to remind my players and their characters that there's far more going on in the world of Iomandra than the quest at hand. The goblin ship's ability to slip past Dragovar patrols tells the heroes something meaningful about the world, that the Dragovar navy has lost control of the Dragon Sea. The war to the west against a former imperial regency fallen under horrors from the Far Realm has taken its toll on the imperial fleet, and the goblins of Sangor are seizing advantage of the situation. But there was one more reason for the encounter. This one-night diversion was also crafted to remind the heroes how powerful they have become. The hobgoblin captain, Mulk, a level 8 soldier, was literally a pushover. He got thrown off the ship by a magical whirlwind in the first round of combat. The goblin mage Zaz, a level 7 controller, was snuffed out before he could monologue. The bugbear shock troopers were swept aside like dust bunnies. One might expect players to get bored fighting weak enemies and scores of minions, and yet this became one of the campaign's most memorable encounters. Like many DMs, I enjoy watching my players squirm and wrestle with conundrums, but giving the heroes an occasional overwhelming advantage presents a refreshing change of pace, particularly when they don't see it coming from a mile away. All that being said, I still had some surprises in store for them. They say good things come in threes, so here we go. Surprise number 1. Boom goes the dynamite. The goblins filled their cargo hold with kegs of alchemical black powder, rigged to blow up the ship if things went horribly awry. After Captain Mulk got the heave-ho, the goblins decided the time was nigh, and they would have succeeded too if it hadn't been for the party's pesky halfling rogue, Oleander. After the goblin demolition squad inadvertently set off 3 powder kegs and filled the lower decks with blinding smoke, a trick I used to foreshadow the imminent destruction of the ship, Oleander jumped into the smoke-filled hold. Once there, he used his formidable bluff skill to impersonate Captain Mulk, telling the demolition squad to forgo the black powder and get their flea-bitten hides on the deck, whereupon they were promptly killed. Surprise number 2. Advantage Goblins. I decided not to make attack rolls for the goblins. Because there were so many of them, basically the goblins had no effective attacks. In place of an attack roll, a goblin would deal 15 damage automatically to one enemy it had combat advantage against. This made the tactical combat more interesting and forced the heroes to stay mobile, and it also felt right for the goblins. Surprise number 3, minions are the bomb. Given the goblins' propensity for alchemical experimentation, it seemed perfectly reasonable that Captain Mulk would have a squad of exploding goblins, tricked out with bandoliers of alchemical fire flasks. Any damage dealt to a tricked out goblin minion would cause it to explode, in a close burst centered on itself, dealing 15 fire damage to all creatures in the burst, including other rigged goblins. Clearly the best tactic was to take out the goblins from afar, but a tall order on a confined and crowded deck of a ship. By the end of the session, the heroes had not only dispatched the goblins, but also rescued the caged prisoner who, it turns out, was first mate of another ship that the goblins had attacked and plundered. Naturally, he presented the heroes with a quest to transport his ship's stolen cargo safely back to the raft town of Anchordown, and thereby earn the favor of another Sea King. One can only speculate what might happen to the heroes in the course of completing this seemingly straightforward side quest. Lessons learned. In any case, here's what I learned from the goblin encounter. Never underestimate the appeal of kicking ass. Players need to feel powerful once in a while, particularly at high levels. If you want your campaign world to feel like a living, breathing place, let the players encounter things below their level. Even low-level monsters can surprise the heroes with clever tactics and a never-say-die attitude. Just consider the history of asymmetric warfare. Don't be afraid to use them, particularly as minions, and don't be afraid to mess with their stats. Until the next encounter. I want to thank all of you who have made it to the end of this video. This reading comes from Chris Perkins' Dungeon Magazine series, The Dungeon Master Experience, in which Chris gives excerpts of wisdom and lessons he's learned from many years of running games. If you're interested in reading it for yourself, you can find a link down in the description along with links to where you can find the music used in this video, which is a product of Critical Role's Scanlan Shorthalt Press.